Hey guys, given the influx of new players recently, I thought it might be a good idea to share my first 3 steps to starting your game like a boss. Step 1 is easy and quick and very important. Make sure everybody has a tool belt. The recipe for tool belts is quite simple and the ingredients are abundant. For every player on the ship you'll need 2 bandages because these bandages break down to 1/2 of an organic fiber, and 1 organic fiber is enough for 1 tool belt. Make sure all your teammates know what you're doing so that there's not 2 people making the same tool belts, and you might find it easier to get time on the deconstructor and the fabricator. If you want to be efficient, keep in mind that you can construct tool belts from the fresh organic fiber while waiting for bandages to be turned into more organic fiber. The advantage to having tool belts is simple. You start with 10 storage slots. The tool belt gives you 6 more. Once you've made enough tool belts for everybody, it's time to move on to step 2, taking over the reactor. Now, look carefully at the reactor to make sure that your engineer isn't doing this already, but a 2-component system is easy, quick, and remarkably simple to construct. Start by searching the ship for wiring components. The random generation of objects that comes with any game start usually puts a few of these sprinkled liberally around the ship's storage containers. You're looking for 3, and you'll also need a diving mask if there isn't any plastic or rubber. The nice thing about wiring components is that they can be deconstructed and the ingredients that come out were used to reconstruct any other wiring component you'd like. Take the wiring components that you found, assuming that none of them are the greater than or the regex, and throw them in the deconstructor. You'll get FPGAs and 1 unit of tin for each of them. Deconstructing the diving mask gets you 1 unit of plastic and 1 unit of rubber. Finally, deconstruct 1 of the FPGA circuits to get plastic and copper. Switching over to the fabricator, use the FPGA circuits and tin that you recovered to create a greater component and a regex component. And last but not least, combine 1 unit of copper and 1 unit of rubber to create 5 wires in the color of your choice. With both the screwdriver and 1 wiring component equipped, right-clicking will bring up the placement grid. Left-clicking while this grid is showing will drop the component into place wherever it is hovering. Once you have both components placed, it's very important to configure them before wiring them to the reactor. Begin by selecting the greater component and changing the true output to 100 and the false output to 0. Now, configuring the regex is slightly more complicated. Again, the true output needs to be set to 100 and the false output to 0, but this time you need to define a search expression, and this one needs to be exact. Hopefully you know how to generate these characters on your keyboard, but if you've never seen that little up arrow before, it's called a circumflex and it's typed by pressing Shift 6. It is very important that you connect the ports I'm about to describe in the same order that I described them in. Make sure you tell your crewmates when you get to this step because the power might fluctuate a little bit while you make these connections. Start by connecting the power value out from the reactor to the second input of the greater component. Then connect the load value out from the reactor to the first input of the greater component. Finally, connect the output of the greater component to the set turbine output input port on the reactor. Then, moving quickly, connect the temperature output from the reactor to the input of the regex component and the output of the regex component to the set fission rate input on the reactor. Once you finish those connections, you've finished step 2. However, before moving to step 3, be absolutely certain that your controller is working properly. Opening the reactor's control panel, you should see both sliders jumping from the extreme left to the extreme right. One of my favorite mechanics in Barotrauma is the opportunity for salvage. Throughout the game, you will encounter dozens, if not hundreds, of ships, wrecks, beacons, stations where you have the opportunity to scavenge all kinds of materials, components, ammunition, all sorts of things you might need in these wrecks. However, to shuttle them back and forth to your sub requires a fair amount of trips or a fair amount of storage. By preparing some storage containers for your away teams, you can enhance their ability to move scavenged materials much more effectively. Storage containers are easy to make and offer plenty of storage, each one requiring only a single steel bar and offering 12 slots of storage. When you start, you should be able to find plasma cutters, welding tools, stun batons, and handcuffs, all of which, when deconstructed, will get you a steel bar. However, make sure, especially with welding tools, that you're not eating into your team's supply, only using the extras. Just like your tool belts, the recipe for storage containers is dead simple. 1 steel bar gets you 1 storage container. Don't forget to move the storage containers to the lockers nearby your airlocks for easy access. That's it. When you're finished, your teammates will all have expanded storage, your reactor will have perfect control, and there's all kinds of storage options for your team on their away missions. Hopefully you guys like this video. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to turn on notifications. And as always, happy diving.